Welcome back. It's Thursday, January 12th, and it's playoff time, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't know, the first round of the NFL playoffs, otherwise known as the wild card round, takes place this weekend over a 3-day stretch, but we'll get into all of that in just a little bit. On today's show, we're going to briefly look at the final playoff bracket of the 2022-23 season. We're going to dive into some quick news, look at all the matchups this weekend, make our picks, and most importantly, have some fun. This is your early reminder to drop a like on the podcast, on the show, whatever you want to call it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new or if you haven't already. Hey man, if you like what you hear, support me, hit that big red button. And also turn those post notifications on, man, so you guys know when these are uploaded. Simple as that. But hopefully everyone is happy and healthy. Without further ado, welcome to the Anomaly Podcast. I'm your host, Owen Stiftar. Let's see what the wild card weekend has to offer. Alright, as I mentioned, first things first, we're going to look at the updated playoff bracket. We'll start in the AFC, as we always do, and then we'll move over to the NFC side of things. We'll quickly run through this, but the one seed in the AFC is the Kansas City Chiefs. And just like the counterpart in the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles, both one seeds will have a home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and they also get a first round bye. So that's the incentive there. But the 2 seed in the AFC is the Buffalo Bills. The 3 seed is the Cincinnati Bengals. The 4 seed is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Those are your division leaders. Starting off the wild card spots in the AFC, you have the number 5 seed, Los Angeles Chargers. They're going into Duval this weekend. The number 6 seed Baltimore Ravens taking on a division foe in Cincy. And another divisional matchup with the 7 seed Miami Dolphins sneaking into the playoffs, going into Buffalo to take on the Bills. On the NFC side of things, obviously, as we mentioned, the number 1 seed is the Philadelphia Eagles. The number 2 seed is the red hot, and I mean hot, San Francisco 49ers. They're on a 10-game win streak. The 3 seed is the Minnesota Vikings. 4 seed is the below 500 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Those are your division leaders there. Starting off the wild card spots, we have the 5 seed at Dallas Cowboys, who are the biggest question mark of the playoffs, in my opinion, without a doubt. The 6 seed is the New York Giants, and the 7 seed is the Seattle Seahawks. We're going to dive into all of these matchups, and we will obviously show this picture at the end of the episode with our updated picks. But some quick news first. Florida to the third. It is the first NFL postseason since 1999 to feature all 3 Florida teams. Though all 3 of these teams scraped into the playoffs, and they all found a way to, a lot of things went their way, right? It's still very cool to see a Florida playoff field, right? If you guys didn't know, I am a Florida Gators fan, though I don't live in Florida. So it is kind of cool to see the pro teams, right, represent the state of Florida. But it is interesting to note that the last time this happened, where all 3 of these teams made the playoffs in the same year, in 1999, the Jaguars in the AFC and the Buccaneers in the NFC, they both made the conference title game in their respective conferences. But nonetheless, it's very cool to see all 3 teams in the same state make the playoffs. Next up is the NFC East. The NFC East as a division hasn't had a repeat champion in 18 straight seasons. That's crazy. You know, it is the longest streak among divisions in the NFL, as well as the longest streak in league history. I believe the Eagles were the last to win the division 2 years in a row, which was in 03 and 04, but don't quote me on that, right? Next up is Jamal Williams. He broke a Barry Sanders and a Detroit Lions record of 17 rushing touchdowns in a single season. You know, for the first time in a while, the Detroit Lions have a 1,000-yard rusher, right? And it's not the guy that we all would have predicted at the beginning of the season. You know, maybe we would have said DeAndre Swift. But no, Lions running back Jamal Williams, he finished the first half of Week 18's game against Green Bay with 15 yards on the ground. That's it. But that alone gave him 1,009 yards on the NFL season, and he's the first Lions running back since Reggie Bush in 2013, which people forget Reggie Bush was a Lion. But he was the first running back since Reggie Bush to have over 1,000 yards on the ground in a single season, so shout out to Jamal Williams. But that's not all. In the second half of that game against the Packers, Jamal Williams would go to score 2 touchdowns on the ground, and he would break a franchise record of the legendary Barry Sanders single season mark of 16 touchdowns. So that record stood for obviously quite a long time, but Jamal Williams, he now has the record of 17 touchdowns in a single season, and that's a tall task to cover, especially for Detroit Lions running backs. And it is also interesting to note that he is a free agent this offseason. I don't see him leaving Detroit, but, we never know, right? We didn't think he would leave Green Bay, but he did. Next up is the first-round buys. I mentioned it earlier, but Kansas City and Philadelphia, they both earned first-round buys, and they obviously won't play this weekend. Both teams finished with a record of 14-3, and they were both awarded first-round buys and home field advantage throughout this year's playoffs. But if you're wondering, I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times already. If you're wondering how important this number 1 seed is that I keep mentioning, since 1976, which was the year that the NFL changed their seeding system to the one that we knew for many, many years, a number 1 seed in either conference has won the Super Bowl a total of 25 times. So since 1976, which accounts for 47 different Super Bowls, 25 times the 1 seed in either conference has made the Super Bowl, or has won the Super Bowl, and that's 53% of the time, right? So over half the time, if you're the 1 seed, you're going to win the Super Bowl, right? Or at least that's what statistics would say. Not that you guys care, not that this means anything, but out of those 47 Super Bowls, the NFC's won 16 of those Super Bowls in the last, since 1976. The AFC's won the remaining 9 from 1 seeds, right? So let me clarify that statement. Out of the 25 times that a 1 seed has won the Super Bowl since 1976, the NFC accounts for 16 of those. AFC's got the rest of the remaining 9, right? But in fact, when we look at the Super Bowl winners by seed, right? Stick with me here. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you, but it's important, right? The number 1 seed has won 53% of those Super Bowls, as we mentioned, since 1976. The number 2 seeds have won 21% of those Super Bowls. The number 3 seeds only won 4%. Oddly enough, when I was going through and doing my research, the number 4 seed has won just about 13% of those Super Bowls. It's at 12.8 or something like that. And then the 5 seed and the 6 seed have both respectively won about 4% of those Super Bowls. So it looks like you really only want to be a 1, 2, or 4 seed, but a 1 seed gives you 30 plus more percent than any other one minimum, right? And obviously, just a couple years ago, the NFL switched to a 17 playoff in each conference, and no 7 seed has ever won the Super Bowl. Maybe this year that happens, but safe to say that home field advantage matters in the playoffs, and it's safe to say that the number 1 seed is very important in Super Bowl winning teams, right? But before we dive into this weekend's matchups, as I was doing my prep for today's show, I had to ask myself, what kind of wild card weekend is this going to be, right? Last season, I looked at it, and the higher seed, the favorite in most cases, they were 5-1. In 2020, 2 years ago, the higher seed was only 2-4, right? So who knows what kind of a weekend is it going to be? Are the road teams going to prevail? Are the home teams, the favorites, going to play up to how they're supposed to? Who knows there, right? But this year, the NFL is rolling with a 3-day format ranging from the Saturday to Monday slate, which I mentioned earlier. And there are three rematches this weekend on Wild Card Weekend. And there's also 3 divisional matchups too. So without further ado, let's dive into the first matchup, which will take place 4:30 Eastern Time on Saturday. We have the 7-seed Seattle Seahawks going into San Fran to take on the red-hot San Francisco 49ers. We'll start with all of the road teams on this playoff slate, as we typically always do. But for Seattle, they're plus 9.5 in this game, which is the line. It seems way too high. So if you are betting, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but that is a very enticing bet to take because plus 9.5 is very high for this game. But this Seattle team, they lost to San Fran twice in the regular season. They say that it's hard to beat a single team 3 times in a single season, but saying with how confident or how not confident head coach Pete Carroll is, I could see the 49ers sweeping the season series. Good news for Seattle, though. Geno Smith averages about 220 passing yards a game against the 49ers. Though they lost both games, he's putting up a respectable number in the passing department. Also, for Seattle, they might have Tyler Lockett back from his index finger injury, which is helpful, but he's doubtful for the game. And if he does play, obviously you need your hands to catch the ball, right? So how impactful will he be? Well, he might be a decoy at the worst, right? But the Seattle team's playing an inexperienced Brock Purdy, which is good news for them. And in the playoffs, we all know how important quarterback play is. Very rarely do you see a not-elite quarterback make a Super Bowl run. So we know how important quarterback play is in the playoffs. So maybe the Seattle team, I think if they were to win this game and pull off an upset, they need to take advantage of Brock Purdy, who has been amazing since he stepped in. But there's more film on him. Maybe Seattle can find something. But we know the Seattle offense, they can be very explosive. The question to me is, can they get to Brock Purdy? And can they limit George Kittle? Because that's Brock Purdy's main target. So those are going to be the 2 questions for me. They're obvious, but they're necessary for Seattle to pull off an upset here. For San Fran, Brock Purdy, as I mentioned, he's 5-0 as a starter since stepping in. They're on a 10-game winning streak. Nobody wants to play them. It's as simple as that. The key to this win streak for San Fran, they don't turn the ball over, and they create a bunch of turnovers. In the last 5 games alone, in Brock Purdy's starts, they have a +9 turnover differential, and George Kittle has stepped up. He's been amazing, right? The connection between the two has been quite interesting, right? It is interesting to note that if the San Fran team were to make a deep playoff run, I believe in the NFC title game, so not this weekend or next weekend, but the following weekend, if they made it that far, I believe they would have Jimmy Garoppolo back for that point, which that would raise an interesting question of would they start the experienced Jimmy Garoppolo, who has taken them to a Super Bowl before in 2020, or would they start the young gun in Brock Purdy, who at that point would be 7-0 as a starter? We'll have to see, right? But look for Purdy and this Niners team to continue the connection with George Kittle, who George Kittle has 7 touchdowns the last 4 weeks. San Fran takes care of business here. They don't cover the line, but they move on to the next round. The next Saturday game takes place at about 8 o'clock, I think, on Saturday. But the number 5 seed Los Angeles Chargers going into Duval to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chargers, they come into this game as one of the hottest teams in football, but they're also coming into this game a little banged up. In Week 18, which is a week that you usually rest your starters, that's not what the Chargers did. Brandon Staley, the coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, he showed his inexperience. As I mentioned, he played his starters, and even though that they were locked into the number 5 seed, no matter the outcome of their game, they ended up suffering injuries to star players in Joey Bosa and Mike Williams, who are both going to be questionable for this Saturday's game, which is pivotal. It's Justin Herbert's first start. It's the first time this Chargers team has made the playoffs in a couple years, and for you to play your starters in a game that didn't mean anything to your franchise and you still lost, Brandon Staley is definitely showing his inexperience. For Jacksonville, they won the regular season matchup between these two teams on the road in convincing fashion, I might add, and they closed the regular season with a 4-game winning streak, including a Week 18 win and get in type game, right, against the Titans, which was a really good game, and it was interesting to see the side note here. It was interesting to see the Josh Dobbs interview on how he was breaking down that last play. But shout out to Josh Dobbs, though. He stepped in and did his part. But for this matchup, it is the only wild card matchup between two quarterbacks that got 4,000 passing yards in the regular season, which we're talking about Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert. And I believe this should be probably the highest scoring weekend game that we get. And even though this Jaguars team is on a magical run, and they at one point were third and fourth in their division, now they won the division and they possibly can win a playoff game. It's hard to bet against the talent of the Chargers. I believe a late game touchdown here from Justin Herbert seals the deal, maybe in a 35-31 game or 35-30 game. I don't know. I'm a big Keenan Allen and Mike Williams fan. So does my bias play a part here? Maybe, right? But I think it would be cool to see this Chargers team move on and possibly play the Chiefs next weekend, right? Obviously, those are two high-powered offenses. Moving on to Sunday. Sunday at 1, I believe, we have the 7-seed Miami Dolphins going into Buffalo to take on the Bills. The Bills, they're heavy favorites here. They're given 9.5. And that's due in large part because of Miami's quarterback situation. Will it be Tua Tagovailoa, who has missed the last 2 games because of a second concussion? Or Teddy Bridgewater. Is that going to be the quarterback for Miami? He's also been hurt. That would lead it to be Skylar Thompson, who's the third-string quarterback. He has a 57% completion percentage since he stepped in this season. Obviously, that's not good from the quarterback position. That's a tall task going on the road in Buffalo, who was 7-1 at home in the regular season. Josh Allen's averaged about 350 yards and 7 touchdowns, no interceptions against the Dolphins in their 2 regular season games. So Josh Allen's been great against this Dolphins team. The Dolphins don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be for them. Buffalo keeps rolling, in honor of Damar Hamlin, who thank God he has been discharged from the hospital. He seems to be in good spirits. He seems to be happy and healthy. So they're going to win this game for Damar Hamlin. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say they win it all, but they win this game for Damar Hamlin. I do want to say before we move on to the next matchup that Tyreek, he's had an amazing season without Patrick Mahomes. I can't say that I saw this level of dominance coming from Tyreek Hill. I assumed he would have an okay season, but not to the level that he is. He is in MVP conversations for sure, and in my opinion, it will be a shame if he's not top 3 in MVP voting, right? But give me Buffalo there. The next Sunday game is it's right there with the Chargers and Jags game as we don't know what's going to happen, right? But it is the 6th seed New York Giants going into Minnesota to take on the 3 seed Vikings. Like I said, this is one of the best chances for a road upset. The Giants took the Vikings to the limit in Week 16. I believe it was a 27-24 win for Minnesota. And in that game, Saquon Barkley, he had 130-plus yards and a touchdown. The Giants are 5-1 this season when Saquon Barkley gets 20 carries or more. And in my opinion, to no one's surprise, Saquon Barkley, he needs a monster performance for this Giants team to win their first playoff game in a while, right? And for them to even have a chance in this game, Saquon needs to have a big game. For Minnesota, the spotlight will be on Kirk Cousins. No surprise. He's 1-3 in the playoffs in his career, and this is his first home start for this Vikings team in his playoff or in his time with Minnesota. But the difference in his first matchup was Minnesota didn't have a turnover. If the Giants can if they can force a few turnovers or maybe even just one, they're going to have a chance. I'm still sticking with the more talented team, who's also the home team. Justin Jefferson, who had 12 catches for 133 yards the first time these two teams met. I believe he goes off again, and he carries this Minnesota team on his back to the next round, which they would take on the San Francisco 49ers, if my predictions, obviously, were to come to fruition, right? But give me the more talented team. I believe Saquon can have a big game, but they need more than just Saquon, a big performance from Saquon, to have a chance in this game. So Sunday Night Football this week, we have the 6th seed Baltimore Ravens, who have a lot of questions circulating right now, going into Cincinnati to take on the 3 seed Bengals. Here's another game, where the quarterback situation directly impacts the game, in my opinion. For Baltimore, will Lamar play? There's reports that when he originally got hurt, I believe it was in week 13 or week 14, they said he would be out 1 to 3 weeks. And as time has progressed, they say his swelling is as worse as it's been, as a report from yesterday. So there's a chance he doesn't play in this game. And even if he does, will it matter knowing that he hasn't played since week 13 or week 14, right? But good news for Baltimore. Their defense has been amazing in Lamar's absence, and they've found a way to limit Joe Burrow, in their 2 games to a little over 200 passing yards a game in their 2 meetings. They need to find a way to do it again, especially with possibly Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley out. For Cincinnati, they haven't lost since that embarrassing Halloween loss to the Cleveland Browns, and their defense has allowed just under 20 points a game in this 8-game winning streak that they're on. Obviously that's good for how explosive the Bengals offense is. If their defense can do their part and stay at this pace, I don't know if anybody's going to beat Cincinnati in this playoff run, because you can guarantee at least 3 or 4 touchdowns from this offense. So if their defense can stay where they're at, if they can stay put, the Cincy's in a good spot. But this could be a close game if Lamar Jackson plays, in my opinion. I believe that would catch the Bengals defense off guard. Obviously, Lamar is arguably the best playmaker in the game of football. But in possibly what could be his last game as a Raven, Lamar Jackson plays and they keep it close, but the Bengals pull out one late. Give me the Bengals on Sunday Night Football to move on to probably Buffalo in this projection, which would be an interesting game. Final game of the week, which we're only 21 or so minutes into the podcast, but when these shows, when we narrow down the slate of games, you're gonna expect shorter podcasts, right? But the 5 seed Dallas Cowboys are going into Tampa to take on the Buccaneers, right? For Dallas, they made a late season push for the number 1 seed, but they obviously fell short. Their offense has struggled down the stretch. They only average about 75 rushing yards a game the last 3 weeks, which means that in this game they're probably going to have to figure something out through the air, right? Because this Buccaneers defense in the Tom Brady era has been notoriously good against the run, right? We'll put it that way. But there's obviously more pressure on the Cowboys here, being America's team. But this is the best team we've seen in the Dak Prescott era, in my opinion. That's including the first year where Dak took over and he was 13-3. and the following years that came. I believe this is the best Cowboys team we've seen in the Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott era. So if this Cowboys team can avoid turnovers offensively, I believe they're going to have a pretty good chance. Obviously I think they're going to have to pass the ball a lot in this game, but we'll have to see, right? We never know with this Cowboys team. For Tom Brady, he somehow managed to get this Buccaneers team to the playoffs despite having a losing record of 8-9. Interestingly enough, it is only the 6th team in NFL history to make the playoffs with a losing record. And 3 of those teams have been from 2010 on, right? So I don't know what that's about, but it is what it is. 3 of those 6 teams in history have been from 2010 on, and 2 of those teams came away with a first-round victory, most notably the 2010 Seahawks, taking down at that time, reigning NFL champion New Orleans Saints. That was the infamous Beastquake game from Marshawn Lynch. If you haven't, for some reason, ever seen that run by Marshawn Lynch or that game from Marshawn Lynch, just look it up. Just look up Beastquake and all the highlights will pop up, right? Amazing game from him. Sucked for me because I was always a big Drew Brees fan. He is my favorite football player of all time, right, Drew Brees. But a great performance from Marshawn nonetheless. But for Tampa Bay, they've been hit or miss against the run, and the offense has been hit or miss pretty much the whole season, right? The Buccaneers have only scored more than 23 points in a game one time, right, since week 9 or something like that. So their offense has struggled, defense has struggled. But one thing we all know, right, there's 3 things guaranteed in life. Death, taxes, and you never bet against Brady, right, at least in the football side of things, right? But even though not a lot has gone right this season, I can't find myself betting against Brady when when it's playoff time, right? And it could possibly be his last run. Give me Brady and the Bucs at home in an upset. You know, I don't. I think when I was prepping for the show, I actually had Dallas winning, right? But just mid-show, I can't be okay with going against Brady. So give me Brady at home in an upset to figure something out against this Dallas team. Next up, we're going to see, on your screen now, I'll put it that way, you will see my season record and my picks for this weekend. Obviously, I have the Chargers going into Kansas City next week, and then we'll have a rematch of Cincinnati and Buffalo, which obviously that'll be a very interesting game that we were robbed of a couple weeks back due to unfortunate circumstances, for sure. But we were robbed of that game at the end of the day. In the NFC side of things, I have all the top seeds moving on, right? But the Buccaneers is an upset. The Chargers is an upset. So I have two upsets this weekend, and it just is what it is. But in the NFC side of things, we'll have Tampa Bay and the Bucs going into Philly next weekend, and Minnesota and San Fran going head-to-head. That'll be a fun matchup, or it could be an ugly one. You know, we never know with Minnesota. But that is my updated playoff standings. You see over here on the left side of your screen, last week we went 11-5 on our picks. So that's 3 straight weeks of 11-plus wins. Our season record comes out to about 63% of the games right. And I believe we started that in week 6, which is crazy, man. We started this podcast and we started these Thursday shows in week 6. And here we are, wild card round. But 63% of games is okay. It's not where I wanted to be, but it is what it is, right? But that's going to do it for today's show. I mean, we're only 27 minutes in, but we're going to get you guys in and out today. I'm not going to hold you guys up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I do want to say that the support has been amazing so far in 2023. So thank you guys all for that, you know, but let me know down in the comments of this video, who are you guys picking for this weekend? You know, I want to know who are you picking for this weekend. You don't have to give me your Super Bowl favorite, but if you want to include that as well, give me your Super Bowl prediction and your winner down below. I always like to see bias play a part in it, but I also love to see other people's predictions. But if you enjoyed the show, you know, drop a like on the show. I'm getting you guys in and out today. Subscribe to the channel if you're new or if you're lurking. You know, I've seen some of our podcasts recently have been over 100 views or 140 views, and obviously I don't have 140 subscribers. So if you enjoy what you're listening to, please hit that big red button. And also turn those post notifications on, man, just because it'll let you know when I post, right? It will keep you alert on when these go live, right? But I will see you guys next Tuesday with, I'm sure, some NBA coverage. Until then, I can't believe we're getting you guys in and out in 28 minutes. But it is what it is. Stay happy. Stay healthy. I'll see you guys Tuesday. I'm out.